At the Long Beach Convention Center in October 1987, 5,000 seats were filled to capacity. The air conditioning struggled against the body heat of tournament spectators who had driven from Nevada, Arizona, and as far north as Sacramento. The main stage was elevated 8 feet above the floor, ringed by 10 rows of bleachers on 3 sides. Afternoon light poured through the western windows, casting long shadows across the mat. By 3:47 p.m. the championship bracket had been narrowed to a single match. The crowd had been waiting for this particular bout since the morning weigh-ins. The challenger was 41 years old. His name was recognized in every serious dojo from San Diego to the Canadian border. He had held the World Professional Heavyweight Karate Championship for 6 consecutive years. His record stood at 73 consecutive matches without defeat. He was 5 feet 11 inches tall, weighed 234 pounds of muscle built through decades of deliberate training, and possessed a spinning back kick that a stunt coordinator would later describe as having the rotational force of a roof-mounted machine gun. He had trained competitors who went on to film careers. Magazines had called him the last true heavyweight champion of the full contact era. He wore a blue gi with gold embroidery across the shoulder. His eyes were the eyes of a man who had won so consistently that winning had become the only thing he could imagine. And the next 10 seconds, with a distance of 5 feet between them, something would happen that the 5,000 people in that arena would spend the next 35 years trying to explain to people who were not there. Nobody in that crowd knew they were about to witness the moment that would become the most disputed, most reinterpreted, most mythologized 10 seconds in American martial arts history. The match had begun at 3:44 p.m. The first 3 minutes were what everyone expected. The champion moved with the precision of a man who had repetition as his weapon. His kick combinations were technical, measured, and to the eye of anyone watching, impossibly fast. He threw a spinning back kick to the body. It landed with enough force that the sound carried to the back rows. The challenger, a slightly built man in a white gi, someone the crowd had not paid particular attention to during the opening announcements, rolled backward to absorb the impact. The champion threw a round kick. The challenger slipped it by dropping his shoulder an inch and letting the kick pass over his collarbone. The champion's face did not change. He had landed clean strikes. He was winning on points. This was his fight to lose. With 56 seconds remaining on the match clock, the champion did something he had done 73 times before. He moved to the center of the mat and waited. This was not an aggressive stance. It was something else. It was the body language of a man declaring that he had established dominance so thoroughly that his opponent was now sparring with a ghost. He had already won. The crowd understood this. The judges understood this. The challenger would have understood this too, except for what happened next. The challenger walked to the microphone. The match official had not called time. The judges had not stepped back. By the rules of the tournament, this was a violation. The match was still active. The challenger took the microphone anyway. He raised it to his mouth and spoke 4 words that would become the hinge upon which 2 careers would turn in opposite directions. Prove your karate works. The words were not delivered as a question. They were delivered as a sentence of fraudulence. The champion, he was saying, was a performer, not a fighter. His technique was cinema. Everything the crowd believed they had witnessed in the past 6 years was theater. The crowd understood this too. The volume in the arena rose. The tournament director, a man named William Chen who had overseen professional karate for 21 years, stood up from his seat. His hands were flat on the table in front of him. He did not move them. The champion stared at the man who had just disrespected him in front of 5,000 people. His jaw tightened, his breathing quickened. Anger moved through his body the way electricity moves through copper wire. This was the moment. This was the insult that the entire framework of the championship existed to contain and resolve. If you want to find out what happened next, make sure you are subscribed and comment below where you are watching from. We release a new episode every Thursday. What happened next was something the champion had never experienced. It was not rage, it was clarity. The man in the white gi stood. He did not stand quickly. He stood the way a man stands when he has already made a decision about something and is simply moving his body to match what he has already decided internally. He wore a denim jacket that had faded to the color of old stone. The jacket had not been there when the match began. Someone had held it ringside. He folded the jacket once, deliberately, and set it down on the edge of the mat. This action took 4 seconds. The crowd recognized the gesture. It was not modern. It belonged to an older vocabulary of fighting. The recognition spread row by row through the bleachers, the way a current moves across water when something heavy sinks beneath the surface. The man turned to face the champion. The crowd saw his face clearly for the first time. He was older than anyone had thought. He was smaller than anyone had thought. He was wearing white socks and street shoes. His hair, where it was visible beneath a cap pulled low, was salt-colored. He had the build of someone who had lived a long time and spent most of that time moving rather than developing muscle mass. The gymnasium lights reflected off his eyes with the peculiar flatness of a man looking at something he has already calculated completely. He spoke a single line that would echo through the testimony of witnesses for decades afterward. He has already lost. He just does not know it yet. The distance between them was 5 feet. This distance was not random. It was the perimeter of what they both understood. A fight is not two men hitting each other. A fight is a negotiation about distance. The champion threw his first technique immediately, as though to punish the verbalization of that line. He threw a spinning back kick, the technique he was known for, the technique that had won 73 consecutive matches. The kick was executed perfectly. It traveled through the air with rotational velocity that broke the sound barrier by a small but measurable degree. The man in the white gi did not block it. He did not parry it. He did not move his arms. Instead, he moved his entire body backward with a single subtle step, 5 inches, which took the chamber of the kick from a lethal trajectory to a trajectory that intersected with empty air. The kick passed through the space where his ribs had been 1/2 second before. Second 1, the champion's momentum carried him forward. He was exposed. The man in the white gi could have struck. He did not. Instead, he waited. In the old texts, this is called the moment of choice. Second 2, the champion recovered into a fighting stance, perpendicular to his first position. His confidence had not broken. He had missed. He would not miss again. He threw a round kick, this one to the head. This one intended to end the match decisively. The man in the white gi moved his head an inch to the right. The kick passed so close that it disturbed the air against his left ear. The crowd heard the sound of the kick. It was the sound of a whip. The man's head had moved with the minimal motion of someone reading text on a page and shifting his eyes to the next line. Second 3, the champion was committed now. He threw a third kick, this one a front kick at close range, target the center of the body. This technique too. The man avoided. He stepped backward slightly, brought his hands up slightly. And in the moment of the closest approach, he moved his pelvis backward by a distance equivalent to the width of his hand. The kick touched his gi. It did not strike anything beneath it. 3 attempts, 3 failures. 3 techniques that had worked 73 consecutive times had worked 0 times in succession. The champion paused. His breathing was heavier. He had expended energy. The man in the white gi had not moved from his original position except to step back 5 inches. His breathing had not changed. His expression had not changed. What the 5,000 people in the arena did not know was that they were watching a lesson. What happened next would be misreported as a knockout. What happened next would be misremembered as violence. What happened next was something more subtle and more devastating than either. The man in the white gi moved forward. He covered the 5 feet of distance in 2 steps. His hand, open-palmed, moved from his waist to a position 3 inches from the champion's sternum. The motion took 1 second. It was delivered with absolute control. It was the technique of a man who had spent 30 years learning the precise angle, the precise speed, the precise moment of contact required to demonstrate a principle without causing permanent injury. The champion's ribs registered the impact before his mind did. His body flew backward 5 feet. His feet left the ground. He landed on his back with the wind expelled from his lungs. He gasped. The crowd did not roar. The crowd was silent. The man in the white gi did not pursue him. He did not stand over him, he extended his hand to help the champion to his feet. This gesture, the extended hand, had taken them both past the point where this was a tournament match. It had become something older, it had become a teaching. The champion took the hand, he was lifted to his feet. The man in the white gi leaned close. He spoke 3 words that only the champion heard. The words were not spoken with contempt, they were spoken with the specific gravity of a man who had just elevated a stranger into a different understanding of what he was. The champion's face changed, the anger was gone. Something else had arrived in its place. Something like recognition. Something like the moment when you understand that everything you believed you understood has been operating at a fraction of its real depth. The champion stood at a choice point. He could refuse what he had just learned. He could call it luck, call it angles, call it a trick. Or he could acknowledge it. He bowed. The bow came from somewhere older than the tournament. It was a complete bow, a 70-degree angle from the waist, and it held for 3 seconds. The crowd understood what this meant. The man in the white gi bowed in return, a smaller motion, a nod of recognition. William Chen, the tournament director, had both hands flat on the table. His eyes were moving back and forth between the 2 men on the stage, as though checking a calculation. A woman in the 3rd row, a journalist who had covered fighting sports for 12 years, had stopped writing in her notepad. A stunt coordinator from Warner Brothers had his arm around the woman next to him. A martial arts instructor from a dojo in Pasadena was saying no. No, that's not possible. One of the judges touched the champion's shoulder as he walked past. The touch was brief. It was meant to confirm something. The champion was real. What had just happened was real. The man in the white gi had not disappeared. The story began to spread within the hour. The woman journalist filed a piece to her publication. The Warner Brothers stunt coordinator called a colleague. The martial arts instructor from Pasadena told 6 students that evening. The champion himself, when people asked him in the days that followed, said only that he had learned something he would spend the next 20 years understanding. By the following week, the story had acquired details that were not present. People said the man had thrown the champion across the stage. People said the champion had been unconscious. People said the man had spoken a prophecy. The original witnesses corrected these details, but the corrections did not spread as fast as the myth. This is what happens when a story transgresses the boundary of what people believe is possible. The story gets remade in the image of the disbelief that generated it. By 1990, the man's identity had been verified by researchers who went through tournament records and local newspaper archives. By 1995, the story had appeared on the internet for the first time, in a martial arts forum with half the details altered and the other half amplified. By 2001, there were 7 different versions of the story circulating simultaneously, each one claiming historical authenticity. By 2010, the event had become a reference point in 1,000 conversations between instructors and students. Used as a metaphor for humility, for the limits of competition, for the difference between a fighter and a warrior. The champion lived until 2019. In his final years, he was interviewed several times about the match. He was asked repeatedly to explain how the man had defeated him. He gave different answers at different times. In one interview, he said it was pure technique. In another, he said it was impossible to explain except by living it. In a third, recorded shortly before his death, he said the man had not defeated him so much as shown him that being undefeated and being undeceived were 2 different things. He said this had changed the direction of his life. He had stopped competing at that moment and had spent the next 30 years teaching with a different philosophy. The man in the white gi never did another interview. He did not seek recognition. The journalists who tried to verify additional details about him found that almost all direct information ended at that afternoon in October 1987. There was no before, there was no after. There was only that single 10-second event which had somehow become large enough to contain an entire career. The tournament had requested tape footage, but the video had been damaged in storage. The photographs had been lost in a darkroom flood in 1989. The only physical evidence remaining was the testimony of 5,000 people, each of whom had been in the arena that day. Each of whom had seen it differently. There is a principle that separates success from mastery. Success is doing the thing. Mastery is understanding why the thing works before you do it. The champion had spent 41 years achieving success. He had spent the next 30 years pursuing mastery. What the 5,000 people in that arena witnessed was not a man winning a tournament. It was a man demonstrating a principle so complete that it dismantled everything the champion thought he knew. It was a lesson given in 10 seconds that would require 30 years of living to fully integrate. The story of that day reminds us of something necessary. It reminds us that credibility and understanding are not the same thing. A man can be genuinely formidable and still be operating with incomplete information. The champion was not a fraud. His technique was real. His success was real. What was incomplete was his conception of what technique could become when paired with something deeper than repetition. Next week we will talk about the time Bruce Lee challenged the heavyweight boxing champion of Northern California on a film set and what happened when the man laughed at him. We will see what Bruce did when his entire reputation was questioned in front of the crew. That episode is called Laughed At by a Boxer, and what Bruce did next. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it.